Elaine the fair, Elaine the lovable, Elaine the lily maid of Astolat, high in her chamber up a tower to the east, guarded the sacred shield of Lancelot, which first she placed where the morning's earliest ray might strike it, and awake her with the gleam. Then, fearing rust or soilure, fashioned for it a case of silk, and braided thereon all the devices blazoned on the shield in their own tinct, and added of her wit a border fantasy of branch and flower, and yellow-throated nestling in the nest. Nor rested thus content, but day by day, leaving her household and good father, climbed that eastern tower, and entering barred her door, stripped off the case, and read the naked shield, now guessed a hidden meaning in his arms, now made a pretty history to herself of every dint a sword had beaten in it, and every scratch a lance had made upon it, conjecturing when and where. This cut is fresh, that 10 years back. This dealt him at Carlisle, that at Carleon, this at Camelot, and God's mercy, what a stroke was there! And here a thrust that might have killed, but God broke the strong lance and rolled his enemy down and saved him. So she lived in fantasy. How came the lily maid by that good shield of Lancelot, she that knew not even his name? He left it with her when he rode to tilt for the great diamond in the diamond jousts, which Arthur had ordained, and by that name had named them, since a diamond was the prize. For Arthur, long before they crowned him king, roving the trackless realms of Lyonesse, had found a glen, grey boulder and black tarn. A horror lived about the tarn, and clave like its own mists to all the mountain side. For here 2 brothers, one a king, had met and fought together, but their names were lost, and each had slain his brother at a blow, and down they fell and made the glen abhorred, and there they lay till all their bones were bleached, and lichened into colour with the crags, and he that once was king had on a crown of diamonds, 1 in front and 4 aside. And Arthur came, and labouring up the pass, all in a misty moonshine, unawares had trodden that crowned skeleton, and the skull brake from the nape, and from the skull the crown rolled into light, and turning on its rims fled like a glittering rivulet to the tarn, and down the shingly scour he plunged and caught, and set it on his head, and in his heart heard murmurs, Lo, thou likewise shalt be king. Thereafter, when a king, he had the gems plucked from the crown, and showed them to his knights, saying, These jewels whereupon I chanced divinely are the kingdom's, not the king's, for public use. Henceforward let there be once every year a joust for one of these. For so by 9 years' proof we needs must learn which is our mightiest, and ourselves shall grow in use of arms and manhood, till we drive the heathen, who some say shall rule the land hereafter, which God hinder. Thus he spoke, and 8 years passed. 8 jousts had been, and still had Lancelot won the diamond of the year, with purpose to present them to the queen when all were won, but meaning all at once to snare her royal fancy with a boon worth half her realm, had never spoken word. Now for the central diamond, and the last and largest. Arthur, holding then his court hard on the river, nigh the place which now is this world's hugest, let proclaim a joust at Camelot, and when the time drew nigh, spake, for she had been sick, to Guinevere. Are you so sick, my queen, you cannot move to these fair jousts? Yea, lord, she said, ye know it. Then will ye miss, he answered, the great deeds of Lancelot, and his prowess in the lists, a sight she loved to look on. And the queen lifted her eyes, and they dwelt languidly on Lancelot, where he stood beside the king. He, thinking that he read her meaning there, "Stay with me, I am sick, my love is more than many diamonds," yielded, and a heart love loyal to the least wish of the queen, however much he yearned to make complete the tale of diamonds for his destined boon, urged him to speak against the truth, and say, "Sir King, mine ancient wound is hardly whole, and lets me from the saddle." And the king glanced first at him, then her, and went his way. No sooner gone than suddenly she began, "To blame, my lord Sir Lancelot, much to blame. Why go ye not to these fair jousts? The knights are half of them our enemies, and the crowd will murmur, Lo, the shameless ones, who take their pastime now the trustful king is gone." Then Lancelot, vexed at having lied in vain, "Are ye so wise? Ye were not once so wise, my queen, that summer, when ye loved me first. Then of the crowd ye took no more account than of the myriad cricket of the mead, when its own voice clings to each blade of grass, and every voice is nothing. As to the knights, them surely can I silence with all ease. But now my loyal worship is allowed of all men. Many a bard without offence has linked our names together in his lay, Lancelot the flower of bravery, Guinevere the pearl of beauty. And our knights at feast have pledged us in this union, while the king would listen smiling. How then? Is there more? Has Arthur spoken aught? Or would yourself, now weary of my service and devoir, henceforth be true to your faultless lord?" She broke into a little scornful laugh. "Arthur, my lord, Arthur the faultless king, that passionate perfection, my good lord. But who can gaze upon the sun in heaven? He never spake word of reproach to me. He never had a glimpse of mine untruth. He cares not for me. Only here to-day there gleamed a vague suspicion in his eyes. Some meddling rogue has tampered with him, else wrapped in this fancy of his table round, and swearing men to vows impossible, to make them like himself. But friend to me, he is all fault who hath no fault at all. For who loves me must have a touch of earth. The low sun makes the colour. I am yours, not Arthur's, as ye know, save by the bond. Therefore hear my words. Go to the jousts. The tiny trumpeting gnat can break our dream when sweetest, and the vermin voices here may buzz so loud. We scorn them, but they sting." Then answered Lancelot, the chief of knights, "And with what face, after my pretext made, shall I appear, O queen, at Camelot? I before a king who honours his own word as if it were his god's?" "Yea," said the queen, "a moral child without the craft to rule, else had he not lost me. But listen to me, if I must find you wit. We hear it said that men go down before your spear at a touch, but knowing you are Lancelot. Your great name this conquers. Hide it, therefore. Go unknown. Win. By this kiss you will, and our true king will then allow your pretext. O my knight, as all for glory! For to speak him true, ye know right well how meek soe'er he seem, no keener hunter after glory breathes. He loves it in his knights more than himself. They prove to him his work. Win and return." Then got Sir Lancelot suddenly to horse, wroth at himself. Not willing to be known, he left the barren beaten thoroughfare, chose the green path that showed the rarer foot, and there among the solitary downs, full often lost in fancy, lost his way, till as he traced a faintly shadowed track, that all in loops and links among the dales ran to the castle of Astolat, he saw, fired from the west, far on a hill, the towers. Thither he made, and blew the gateway horn. Then came an old, dumb, myriad-wrinkled man, who let him into lodging and disarmed. And Lancelot marvelled at the wordless man, and issuing found the Lord of Astolat with 2 strong sons, Sir Tor and Sir Lavaine, moving to meet him in the castle court. Close behind them stepped the lily maid Elaine, his daughter. Mother of the house there was not. Light jest among them rose with laughter dying down, as the great knight approached them. Then the Lord of Astolat, "Whence comest thou, my guest? And by what name livest thou between the lips? For by thy state and presence I might guess thee chief of those after the king who eat in Arthur's halls. Him have I seen. The rest, his table round, known as they are, to me they are unknown." And answered Lancelot, the chief of knights, "Known am I, and of Arthur's hall, and known what I by mere mischance have brought my shield. But since I go to joust as one unknown at Camelot for the diamond, ask me not. Hereafter ye shall know me, and the shield. I pray you lend me one, if such you have, blank, or at least with some device not mine." Then said the Lord of Astolat, "Here is Tor's. Hurt in his first tilt was my son, Sir Tor, and so, God wot, his shield is blank enough. His ye can have." Then added plain Sir Tor, "Yea, since I cannot use it, ye may have it." Here laughed the father, saying, "Fie, Sir Churl, is that answer for a noble knight? Allow him. But Lavaine, my younger here, he is so full of lustihood, he will ride, joust for it, and win, and bring it in an hour, and set it in this damsel's golden hair, to make her thrice as wilful as before." "Nay, father, nay, good father, shame me not before this noble knight," said young Lavaine, "for nothing. Surely I but played on Tor. He seemed so sullen, vexed he could not go. A jest, no more. For all night the maiden dreamt that some one put this diamond in her hand, and that it was too slippery to be held, and slipped and fell into some pool or stream, the castle well belike. And then I said that if I went and if I fought and won it, but all was jest and joke among ourselves, then must she keep it safelier. All was jest, but father give me leave, and if he will, to ride to Camelot with this noble knight. Win shall I not, but do my best to win. Young as I am, yet would I do my best." "So will ye grace me," answered Lancelot, smiling a moment, "with your fellowship o'er these waste downs whereon I lost myself. Then were I glad of you as guide and friend. And you shall win this diamond, as I hear it is a fair large diamond, if ye may, and yield it to this maiden if ye will." "A fair large diamond," added plain Sir Tor. "Such be for queens, and not for simple maids." Then she, who held her eyes upon the ground, Elaine, and heard her name so tossed about, flushed slightly at the slight disparagement before the stranger knight, who, looking at her full courtly, yet not falsely, thus returned, "If what is fair be but for what is fair, and only queens are to be counted so, rash were my judgment then, who deemed this maid might wear as fair a jewel as is on earth, not violating the bond of like to like." He spoke and ceased. The lily maid Elaine, won by the mellow voice, before she looked, lifted her eyes, and read his lineaments. The great and guilty love he bare the queen, in battle with the love he bare his lord, had marred his face, and marked it ere his time. Another sinning on such heights with one, the flower of all the West and all the world, had been the sleeker for it, but in him his mood was often like a fiend, and rose and drove him into wastes and solitudes for agony, who was yet a living soul. Marred as he was, he seemed the goodliest man that ever among ladies ate in hall, and noblest, when she lifted up her eyes. However marred, of more than twice her years, seamed with an ancient sword cut on the cheek, and bruised and bronzed, she lifted up her eyes and loved him with that love which was her doom. And the great knight, the darling of the court, loved of the loveliest, into that rude hall stepped with all grace, and not with half disdain hid under grace, as in a smaller time, but kindly man moving among his kind, whom they with meats and vintage of the best, and talk and minstrel melody entertained, and much they asked of court and table round, and ever well and readily answered he. But Lancelot, when they glanced at Guinevere, suddenly speaking of the wordless man, heard from the baron that 10 years before the heathen caught and reft him of his tongue. He learnt and warned me of their fierce design against my house, and him they caught and maimed. But I, my sons, and little daughter fled from bonds or death, and dwelt among the woods by the great river in a boatman's hut. Dull days were those, till our good Arthur broke the pagan yet once more on Baden Hill. "O their great lord, doubtless," Lavaine said, rapt by all the sweet and sudden passion of youth towards greatness in its elder. "You have fought, O tell us, for we live apart, you know of Arthur's glorious wars." And Lancelot spoke and answered him at full, as having been with Arthur in the fight which all day long rang by the white mouth of the violent Glem, and in the 4 loud battles by the shore of Douglas, that on Bassa, then the war that thundered in and out the gloomy skirts of Celadon the forest, and again by Castle Gernion, where the glorious king had on his cuirass worn Our Lady's head, carved of one emerald centred in a sun of silver rays, that lightened as he breathed. And at Carleon had he helped his lord, when the strong neighings of the wild white horse set every gilded parapet shuddering. And up in Agned Cathrigonium too, and down the waste sand shores of Trath-Treroit, where many a heathen fell. And on the Mount of Baden I myself beheld the king charge at the head of all his table round, and all his legions, crying Christ and him, and break them. And I saw him after stand high on a heap of slain, from spur to plume red as the rising sun with heathen blood. And seeing me with a great voice, he cried, "They are broken, they are broken." For the king, however mild he seems at home, nor cares for triumph in our mimic wars, the jousts. For if his own knight cast him down, he laughs, saying his knights are better men than he. Yet in this heathen war the fire of God fills him. I never saw his like. There lives no greater leader. While he uttered this, low to her own heart said the lily maid, "Save your own great self, fair lord." And when he fell from talk of war to traits of pleasantry, being mirthful he, but in a stately kind, she still took note that when the living smile died from his lips, across him came a cloud of melancholy severe, from which again, whenever in her hovering to and fro the lily maid had striven to make him cheer, there brake a sudden beaming tenderness of manners and of nature, and she thought that all was nature, all perchance for her. And all night long his face before her lived, as when a painter, poring on a face, divinely through all hindrance finds the man behind it, and so paints him that his face, the shape and colour of a mind and life, lives for his children, ever at its best and fullest. So the face before her lived, dark splendid, speaking in the silence, full of noble things, and held her from her sleep, till wraith she rose half cheated in the thought she needs must bid farewell to sweet Lavaine. First in fear, step after step, she stole down the long tower stairs hesitating. Anon she heard Sir Lancelot cry in the court, "This shield, my friend, where is it?" And Lavaine passed inward, as she came from out the tower. There to his proud horse Lancelot turned, and smoothed the glossy shoulder, humming to himself. Half envious of the flattering hand, she drew nearer and stood. He looked, and more amazed than if 7 men had set upon him, saw the maiden standing in the dewy light. He had not dreamed she was so beautiful. Then came on him a sort of sacred fear, for silent though he greeted her, she stood rapt on his face as if it were a god's. Suddenly flashed on her a wild desire that he should wear her favour at the tilt. She braved a riotous heart in asking for it. Fair lord, whose name I know not, noble it is, I well believe, the noblest, will you wear my favour at this tourney? Nay, said he, fair lady, since I never yet have worn favour of any lady in the lists. Such is my wont, as those who know me know. Yea, so, she answered, then in wearing mine needs must be lesser likelihood, noble lord, that those who know should know you. And he turned her counsel up and down within his mind, and found it true, and answered, True, my child. Well, I will wear it. Fetch it out to me. What is it? And she told him a red sleeve broidered with pearls, and brought it. Then he bound her token on his helmet with a smile, saying, I never yet have done so much for any maiden living. The blood sprang to her face and filled her with delight, but left her all the paler when Lavaine, returning, brought the yet unblazoned shield his brother's, which he gave to Lancelot, who parted with his own to fair Elaine. Do me this grace, my child, to have my shield in keeping till I come. A grace to me, she answered twice today. I am your squire. Whereat Lavaine said, laughing, Lily maid, for fear our people call you Lily maid in earnest, let me bring your colour back, once, twice, and thrice. Now get you hence to bed. So kissed her, and Sir Lancelot his own hand, and thus they moved away. She stayed a minute, then made a sudden step to the gate, and there, her bright hair blown about the serious face yet rosy kindled with her brother's kiss, paused by the gateway, standing near the shield in silence, while she watched their arms far off sparkle until they dipped below the downs. Then to her tower she climbed, and took the shield, there kept it, and so lived in fantasy. Meanwhile the new companions passed away far o'er the long backs of the bushless downs, to where Sir Lancelot knew there lived a knight not far from Camelot, now for 40 years a hermit, who had prayed, laboured, and prayed, and ever labouring had scooped himself in the white rock a chapel and a hall on massive columns, like a shorecliff cave, and cells and chambers. All were fair and dry. The green light from the meadows underneath struck up and lived along the milky roofs, and in the meadows tremulous aspen trees and poplars made a noise of falling showers, and thither wending there that night they bode. And when the next day broke from underground, and shot red fire and shadows through the cave, they rose, heard mass, broke fast, and rode away. Then Lancelot saying, Hear, but hold my name hidden, who ride with Lancelot of the Lake, abashed young Lavaine, whose instant reverence, dearer to true young hearts than their own praise, but left him leave to stammer, Is it indeed? And after muttering, The great Lancelot, at last he got his breath and answered, One have I seen. That other our liege lord, the dread Pendragon, Britain's king of kings, of whom the people talk mysteriously. He will be there. Then were I stricken blind that minute, I might say that I had seen. So spake Lavaine, and when they reached the lists by Camelot in the meadow, let his eyes run through the peopled gallery, which half round lay like a rainbow fallen upon the grass, until they found the clear-faced king, who sat robed in red samite, easily to be known, since to his crown the golden dragon clung. And down his robe the dragon writhed in gold, and from the carven work behind him crept 2 dragons gilded, sloping down to make arms for his chair, while all the rest of them, through knots and loops and folds innumerable, fled ever through the woodwork, till they found the new design wherein they lost themselves, yet with all ease, so tender was the work. And in the costly canopy o'er him set blazed the last diamond of the nameless king. Then Lancelot answered young Lavaine and said, Me you call great. Mine is the firmest seat, the truer lance, but there is many a youth now crescent who will come to all as I am and overcome it. And in me there dwells no greatness, save it be some far-off touch of greatness to know well I am not great. There is the man, and Lavaine gaped upon him, as on a thing miraculous. And anon the trumpets blew, then did either side, they that assailed and they that held the lists, set lance in rest, strike spur, suddenly move, meet in the midst, and there so furiously shock, that a man far off might well perceive, if any man that day were left afield, the hard earth shake, and a low thunder of arms. And Lancelot bowed a little, till he saw which were the weaker, then he hurled into it against the stronger. Little need to speak of Lancelot in his glory. King, duke, earl, count, baron, whom he smote he overthrew. But in the field were Lancelot's kith and kin, ranged with the table round that held the lists, strong men, and wrathful that a stranger knight should do and almost overdo the deeds of Lancelot. And one said to the other, Lo, what is he? I do not mean the force alone, the grace and versatility of the man. Is it not Lancelot? When has Lancelot won favour of any lady in the lists? Not such is wont as we that know him know. How then? Who then? A fury seized them all, a fiery family passion for the name of Lancelot, and a glory one with theirs. They couched their spears and pricked their steeds, and thus, their plumes driven backward by the wind they made in moving, altogether down upon him bare, as a wild wave in the wide North Sea, green glimmering toward the summit, bears with all its stormy crests that smoke against the skies, down on a bark and overbears the bark, and him that helms it. So they overbore Sir Lancelot and his charger, and a spear down glancing lamed the charger, and a spear pricked sharply his own cuirass, and the head pierced through his side, and there snapped and remained. Then Sir Lavaine did well and worshipfully. He bore a knight of all repute to the earth, and brought his horse to Lancelot where he lay. He up the side sweating with agony got, but thought to do while he might yet endure, and being lustily holpen by the rest his party, though it seemed half miracle to those he fought with, drave his kith and kin and all the table round that held the lists back to the barrier. Then the trumpets blew, proclaiming his the prize who wore the sleeve of scarlet and the pearls, and all the knights, his party, cried, Advance and take thy prize, the diamond. But he answered, Diamond me no diamonds. For God's love a little air. Prize me no prizes, for my prize is death. Hence will I, and I charge you follow me not. He spoke and vanished suddenly from the field, with young Lavaine into the poplar grove. There from his charger down he slid and sat, gasping to Sir Lavaine, Draw the lance head. Ah, my sweet Lord Lancelot, said Lavaine, I dread me if I draw it you will die. But he, I die already with it. Draw! Draw! And Lavaine drew, and Sir Lancelot gave a marvellous great shriek and ghastly groan, and half his blood burst forth, and down he sank for the pure pain, and wholly swooned away. Then came the hermit out, and bare him in, there staunched his wound, and there, in daily doubt whether to live or die, for many a week hid from the wide world's rumour by the grove of poplars with their noise of falling showers, and ever tremulous aspen trees, he lay. But on that day when Lancelot fled the lists, his party, knights of utmost north and west, lords of waste marches, kings of desolate isles, came round their great Pendragon, saying to him, Lo, sire, our knight, through whom we won the day, hath gone sore wounded, and hath left his prize untaken, crying that his prize is death. Heaven hinder, said the king, that such an one, so great a knight as we have seen to-day, he seemed to me another Lancelot. Yea, 20 times I thought him Lancelot. He must not pass uncared for. Wherefore rise, O Gawain, and ride forth and find the knight. Wounded and wearied, needs must he be near. I charge you that you get at once to horse. And knights and kings, there breathes not one of you will deem this prize of ours as rashly given. His prowess was too wondrous. We will do him no customary honour. Since the knight came not to us, of us to claim the prize, ourselves will send it after. Rise and take this diamond and deliver it, and return and bring us where he is and how he fares. Cease not from your quest until ye find. So saying, from the carven flower above, to which it made a restless heart, he took and gave the diamond. Then from where he sat at Arthur's right, with smiling face arose, with smiling face and frowning heart, a prince in the mid-might and flourish of his May, Gawain, surnamed the Courteous, fair and strong, and after Lancelot, Tristram, and Geraint, and Gareth, a good knight, but therewithal some Modred's brother, the child of Lot, nor often loyal to his word, and now wroth that the king's command to sally forth in quest of whom he knew not, made him leave the banquet and concourse of knights and kings. So all in wrath he got to horse and went, while Arthur to the banquet dark in mood passed, thinking, is it Lancelot who hath come despite the wound he spake of, all for gain of glory, and hath added wound to wound, and ridden away to die? So feared the king, and after 2 days' tarriance there returned. Then when he saw the queen, embracing asked, Love, are you yet so sick? Nay, lord, she said, and where is Lancelot? Then the queen amazed, Was he not with you? Won he not your prize? Nay, but one like him. Why, that like was he. And when the king demanded how she knew, said, Lord, no sooner had ye parted from us, than Lancelot told me of a common talk, that men went down before his spear at a touch, but knowing he was Lancelot. His great name conquered, and therefore would he hide his name from all men, even the king. To this end had made a pretext of a hindering wound, that he might joust unknown of all, and learn if his old prowess were in aught decayed. And added, Our true Arthur, when he learns, will well allow me pretext as for gain of purer glory. Then replied the king, Far lovelier in our Lancelot had it been, in lieu of idly dallying with the truth, to have trusted me as he hath trusted thee. Surely his king and most familiar friend might well have kept his secret. True indeed, albeit I know my knights fantastical, so fine a fear in our large Lancelot must needs have moved my laughter. Now remains but little cause for laughter. His own kin, ill news, my queen, for all who love him this, his kith and kin not knowing set upon him, so that he went sore wounded from the field. Yet good news too, for goodly hopes are mine that Lancelot is no more at Lonely Heart. He wore against his wont upon his helm a sleeve of scarlet, broidered with great pearls, some gentle maiden's gift. Yea, Lord, she said, thy hopes are mine. And saying that, she choked and sharply turned about to hide her face, passed to her chamber, and there flung herself down on the great king's couch, and writhed upon it, and clenched her fingers till they bit the palm, and shrieked out, "Traitor!" to the unhearing wall. Then flashed into wild tears, and rose again, and moved about her palace proud and pale. Gawain the while through all the region round rode with his diamond, wearied of the quest, touched at all points except the poplar grove, and came at last, though late, to Astolat, whom glittering in enamelled arms the maid glanced at and cried, "What news from Camelot, Lord? What of the knight with the red sleeve?" He won. "I knew it," she said, but parted from the jousts, hurt in the side, whereat she caught her breath. Through her own side she felt the sharp lance go. Thereon she smote her hand, well nigh she swooned, and while he gazed wonderingly at her, came the Lord of Astolat out, to whom the prince reported who he was, and on what quest sent, that he bore the prize and could not find the victor, but had ridden a random round to seek him, and had wearied of the search. To whom the Lord of Astolat, "Bide with us, and ride no more at random, noble prince. Here was the knight, and here he left a shield. This will he send or come for. Furthermore, our son is with him. We shall hear anon, needs must hear." To this the courteous prince accorded with his wonted courtesy with a touch of traitor in it, and stayed, and cast his eyes on fair Elaine, where could be found face daintier, then her shape from forehead down to foot perfect, again from foot to forehead exquisitely turned. Well, if I bide, lo, this wild flower for me. And oft they met among the garden yews, and there he set himself to play upon her with sallying wit, free flashes from a height above her, graces of the court, and songs, sighs, and slow smiles, and golden eloquence, and amorous adulation, till the maid rebelled against it, saying to him, "Prince, O loyal nephew of our noble king, why ask you not to see the shield he left, whence you might learn his name? Why slight your king and lose the quest he sent you on, and prove no surer than our falcon yesterday, who lost the hern we slipped her at, and went to all the winds?" "Nay, by mine head," said he, "I lose it as we lose the lark in heaven, O damsel, in the light of your blue eyes. But an ye will it, let me see the shield." And when the shield was brought, and Gawain saw Sir Lancelot's azure lions, crowned with gold, ramp in the field, he smote his thigh and mocked. Right was the king, our Lancelot, that true man, and right was I, she answered merrily, I who dreamt my knight the greatest knight of all. "And if I dreamt," said Gawain, "that you loved this greatest knight, your pardon, lo, ye know it. Speak, therefore, shall I waste myself in vain?" Full simple was her answer, "What know I? My brethren have been all my fellowship, and I, when often they have talked of love, wished it had been my mother, for they talked, meseemed, of what they knew not. So myself, I know not if I know what true love is. But if I know, then if I love not him, I know there is none other I can love." "Yea, by God's death," said he, "ye love him well, but would not, knew ye what all others know, and whom he loves." "So be it," cried Elaine, and lifted her fair face and moved away. But he pursued her, calling, "Stay a little, one golden minute's grace. He wore your sleeve. Would he break faith with one I may not name? Must our true man change like a leaf at last? Nay, like enow. Why then, far be it from me to cross our mighty Lancelot in his loves. And damsel, for I deem you know full well where your great knight is hidden, let me leave my quest with you, the diamond also here. For if you love, it will be sweet to give it, and if he love, it will be sweet to have it from your own hand. And whether he love or not, a diamond is a diamond. Fare you well 1,000 times, 1,000 times farewell. Yet if he love and his love hold, we two may meet at court hereafter. There, I think, so ye will learn the courtesies of the court, we two shall know each other." Then he gave and slightly kissed the hand to which he gave the diamond, and all wearied of the quest leapt on his horse, and carolling as he went a true love ballad, lightly rode away. Thence to the court he passed. There told the king what the king knew, Sir Lancelot is the knight, and added, "Sire, my liege, so much I learnt, but failed to find him, though I rode all round the region, but I lighted on the maid whose sleeve he wore. She loves him, and to her, deeming our courtesy as the truest law, I gave the diamond. She will render it, for by mine head she knows his hiding place." The seldom frowning king frowned, and replied, "Too courteous truly. Ye shall go no more on quest of mine, seeing that ye forget obedience is the courtesy due to kings." He spake and departed, wroth but all in awe, for 20 strokes of the blood without a word lingered that other, staring after him. Then shook his hair, strode off, and buzzed abroad about the maid of Astolat and her love. All ears were pricked at once, all tongues were loosed. The maid of Astolat loves Sir Lancelot. Sir Lancelot loves the maid of Astolat. Some read the king's face, some the queen's, and all had marvel what the maid might be, but most predoomed her as unworthy. One old dame came suddenly on the queen with the sharp news. She, that had heard the noise of it before, but sorrowing Lancelot should have stooped so low, marred her friend's aim with pale tranquillity. So ran the tale like fire about the court, fire in dry stubble, and 9 days' wonder flared, till even the knights at banquet twice or thrice forgot to drink to Lancelot and the queen, and pledging Lancelot and the lily maid smiled at each other, while the queen, who sat with lips severely placid, felt the knot climb in her throat, and with her feet unseen crushed the wild passion out against the floor beneath the banquet, where all the meats became as wormwood, and she hated all who pledged. But far away the maid in Astolat, her guiltless rival, she that ever kept the one day seen Sir Lancelot in her heart, crept to her father, while he mused alone, sat on his knee, stroked his grey face, and said, "Father, you call me wilful, and the fault is yours who let me have my will. And now, sweet father, will you let me lose my wits?" "Nay," said he, "surely." "Wherefore let me hence," she answered, "and find out our dear Lavaine." "You will not lose your wits for dear Lavaine." "Bide," answered he, "we needs must hear anon of him and of that other." "Ay," she said, "and of that other, for I needs must hence and find that other wheresoe'er he be, and with mine own hand give his diamond to him, lest I be found as faithless in the quest as yon proud prince who left the quest to me. Sweet father, I behold him in my dreams, gaunt as it were the skeleton of him, death pale, for lack of gentle maiden's aid. The gentler born the maiden, the more bound, my father, to be sweet and serviceable to noble knights in sickness, as ye know when these have worn their tokens. Let me hence, I pray you." Then her father nodding said, Ay, the diamond. Wit ye well, my child, right fain were I to learn this knight were whole, being our greatest. Yea, and you must give it. And sure I think this fruit is hung too high for any mouth to gape for, save a queen's. Nay, I mean nothing. So then, get you gone. Being so very wilful, you must go. Lightly, her suit allowed, she slipped away, and while she made her ready for her ride, her father's latest word hummed in her ear, being so wilful, you must go, and changed itself and echoed in her heart, being so very wilful, you must die. But she was happy enough and shook it off, as we shake off the bee that buzzes at us, and in her heart she answered it and said, What matter so I help him back to life? Then far away, with good Sir Tor for guide, rode o'er the long backs of the bushless downs to Camelot, and before the city gates came on her brother with a happy face, making a roan horse caper and curvet for pleasure all about a field of flowers, whom when she saw, Lavaine, she cried, Lavaine, how fares my lord Sir Lancelot? He amazed, Tor and Elaine, why here, Sir Lancelot? How know ye my lord's name is Lancelot? But when the maid had told him all her tale, then turned Sir Tor, and being in his moods left them, and under the strange statued gate, where Arthur's wars were rendered mystically, passed up the still rich city to his kin, his own far blood which dwelt at Camelot. And her Lavaine across the poplar grove led to the caves. There first she saw the casque of Lancelot on the wall. A scarlet sleeve, though carved and cut, and half the pearls away, streamed from it still. And in her heart she laughed, because he had not loosed it from his helm, but meant once more perchance to tourney in it. And when they gained the cell wherein he slept, his battle-writhen arms and mighty hands lay naked on the wolf-skin, and a dream of dragging down his enemy made them move. Then she that saw him lying unsleek, unshorn, gaunt as it were the skeleton of himself, uttered a little tender dolorous cry. The sound not wonted in a place so still woke the sick knight, and while he rolled his eyes yet blank from sleep, she started to him, saying, Your prize the diamond sent you by the king. His eyes glistened. She fancied, Is it for me? And when the maid had told him all the tale of king and prince, the diamond sent, the quest assigned to her not worthy of it, she knelt full lowly by the corner of his bed, and laid the diamond in his open hand. Her face was near. And as we kiss the child that does the task assigned, he kissed her face. At once she slipped like water to the floor. Alas, he said, your ride hath wearied you. Rest must you have. No rest for me, she said. Nay, for near you, fair lord, am I at rest. What might she mean by that? His large black eyes, yet larger through his leanness, dwelt upon her, till all her heart's sad secret blazed itself in the heart's colours on her simple face. And Lancelot looked and was perplexed in mind, and being weak in body said no more, but did not love the colour. Woman's love save one he not regarded, and so turned sighing and feigned asleep until he slept. Then rose Elaine and glided through the fields, and passed beneath the weirdly sculptured gates far up the dim rich city to her kin. There bode the night, but woke with dawn and passed down through the dim rich city to the fields, thence to the cave. So day by day she passed in either twilight ghost-like to and fro gliding, and every day she tended him, and likewise many a night. And Lancelot would, though he called his wound a little hurt whereof he should be quickly whole, at times brain-feverous in his heat and agony, seem uncourteous, even he. But the meek maid sweetly forbore him ever, being to him meeker than any child to a rough nurse, milder than any mother to a sick child, and never woman yet, since man's first fall, did kindlier unto man, but her deep love upbore her, till the hermit, skilled in all the simples and the science of that time, told him that her fine care had saved his life. And the sick man forgot her simple blush, would call her friend and sister, sweet Elaine, would listen for her coming and regret her parting step, and held her tenderly, and loved her with all love except the love of man and woman, when they loved their best, closest, and sweetest, and had died the death in any knightly fashion for her sake. And peradventure had he seen her first, she might have made this and that other world another world for the sick man. But now the shackles of an old love straitened him. His honour rooted in dishonour stood, and faith unfaithful kept him falsely true. Yet the great knight in his mid-sickness made full many a holy vow and pure resolve. These, as but born of sickness, could not live, for when the blood ran lustier in him again, full often the bright image of one face, making a treacherous quiet in his heart, dispersed his resolution like a cloud. Then if the maiden, while that ghostly grace beamed on his fancy, spoke, he answered not, or short and coldly. And she knew right well what the rough sickness meant, but what this meant she knew not, and the sorrow dimmed her sight, and drave her ere her time across the fields far into the rich city, where alone she murmured, "Vain, in vain, it cannot be. He will not love me. How then? Must I die?" Then, as a little helpless innocent bird, that has but one plain passage of few notes, will sing the simple passage o'er and o'er, for all an April morning, till the ear wearies to hear it, so the simple maid went half the night repeating, "Must I die?" And now to right she turned, and now to left, and found no ease in turning or in rest. And "Him or death," she muttered, "death or him," again, and like a burthen, "Him or death." But when Sir Lancelot's deadly hurt was whole, to Astolat returning rode the three. There, morn by morn, arraying her sweet self in that wherein she deemed she looked her best, she came before Sir Lancelot, for she thought, "If I be loved, these are my festal robes. If not, the victim's flowers before he fall." And Lancelot ever pressed upon the maid that she should ask some goodly gift of him, for her own self or hers. "And do not shun to speak the wish most near to your true heart. Such service have ye done me, that I make my will of yours. And prince and lord am I in mine own land, and what I will I can." Then, like a ghost, she lifted up her face, but like a ghost without the power to speak. And Lancelot saw that she withheld her wish, and bode among them yet a little space till he should learn it. And one morn it chanced he found her in among the garden yews, and said, "Delay no longer, speak your wish, seeing I go to-day." Then out she brake, "Going, and we shall never see you more, and I must die for want of one bold word." "Speak." "That I live to hear," he said, "is yours." And suddenly and passionately she spoke, "I have gone mad. I love you. Let me die." "Ah, sister," answered Lancelot, "what is this?" And innocently extending her white arms, "Your love," she said, "your love, to be your wife." And Lancelot answered, "Had I chosen to wed, I had been wedded earlier, sweet Elaine, but now there never will be wife of mine." "No, no," she cried, "I care not to be wife, but to be with you still, to see your face, to serve you, and to follow you through the world." And Lancelot answered, "Nay, the world, all ear and eye." with such a stupid heart to interpret ear and eye, and such a tongue to blare its own interpretation. Nay, full ill then should I quit your brother's love, and your good father's kindness. And she said, Not to be with you, not to see your face. Alas for me, then my good days are done. Nay, noble maid, he answered, 10 times nay. This is not love, but love's first flash in youth, most common. Yea, I know it of mine own self, and you yourself will smile at your own self hereafter, when you yield your flower of life to one more fitly yours, not thrice your age. Then will I, for true you are, and sweet beyond mine old belief in womanhood, more specially should your good knight be poor, endow you with broad land and territory, even to the half my realm beyond the seas, so that would make you happy. Furthermore, even to the death, as though you were my blood, in all your quarrels will I be your knight. This I will do, dear damsel, for your sake, and more than this I cannot. While he spoke, she neither blushed nor shook, but deathly pale stood grasping what was nearest, then replied, Of all this will I nothing, and so fell. And thus they bore her swooning to her tower. Then spake, to whom through those black walls of view their talk had pierced, her father. Ay, a flash, I fear me, that will strike my blossom dead. Too courteous are ye, fair Lord Lancelot. I pray you, use some rough discourtesy to blunt or break her passion. Lancelot said, That were against me. What I can, I will. And there that day remained, and toward even sent for his shield. Full meekly rose the maid, stripped off the case, and gave the naked shield. Then, when she heard his horse upon the stones, unclasping flung the casement back, and looked down on his helm, from which her sleeve had gone. And Lancelot knew the little clinking sound, and she, by tact of love, was well aware that Lancelot knew that she was looking at him, and yet he glanced not up, nor waved his hand, nor bade farewell, but sadly rode away. This was the one discourtesy that he used. So in her tower alone the maiden sat. His very shield was gone. Only the case, her own poor work, her empty labour left. But still she heard him. Still his picture formed and grew between her and the pictured wall. Then came her father, saying in low tones, Have comfort, whom she greeted quietly. Then came her brethren, saying, Peace to thee, sweet sister, whom she answered with all calm. But when they left her to herself again, death, like a friend's voice from a distant field approaching through the darkness, called. The owl's wailing had power upon her, and she mixed her fancies with the sallow rifted glooms of evening and the moanings of the wind. And in those days she made a little song, and called her song the song of love and death, and sang it. Sweetly would she make and sing. Sweet is true love, though given in vain, in vain. Sweet is death, who puts an end to pain. I know not which is sweeter, no, not I. Love, art thou sweet? Then bitter death must be. Love, thou art bitter. Sweet is death to me. O love, if death be sweeter, let me die. Sweet love that seems not made to fade away. Sweet death that seems to make us loveless clay. I know not which is sweeter, no, not I. I fain would follow love if that could be. I needs must follow death. Who calls for me? Call and I follow, I follow. Let me die. High with the last line scaled her voice, and this all in a fiery dawning wild with wind that shook her tower. The brothers heard, and thought with shuddering, Hark, the phantom of the house that ever shrieks before a death, and called the father, and all three in hurry and fear ran to her. And lo, the blood-red light of dawn flared on her face, she shrilling, "Let me die." As when we dwell upon a word we know, repeating till the word we know so well becomes a wonder, and we know not why, so dwelt the father on her face, and thought, "Is this Elaine?" Till back the maiden fell, and gave a languid hand to each, and lay speaking a still good morrow with her eyes. At last she said, "Sweet brothers, yesternight I seemed a curious little maid again, as happy as when we dwelt among the woods, and when ye used to take me with the flood up the great river in the boatman's boat. Only ye would not pass beyond the cape that has the poplar on it. There ye fixed your limit, oft returning with the tide, and yet I cried because ye would not pass beyond it, and far up the shining flood until we found the palace of the king, and yet ye would not. But this night I dreamed that I was all alone upon the flood, and then I said, "Now shall I have my will." And there I woke, but still the wish remained. So let me hence that I may pass at last beyond the poplar and far up the flood, until I find the palace of the king. There will I enter in among them all, and no man there will dare to mock at me, but there the fine Gawain will wonder at me, and there the great Sir Lancelot muse at me, Gawain who bade 1,000 farewells to me, Lancelot who coldly went, nor bade me one. And there the king will know me and my love, and there the queen herself will pity me, and all the gentle court will welcome me, and after my long voyage I shall rest. "Peace," said her father. "O my child, ye seem light-headed. For what force is yours to go so far, being sick? And wherefore would ye look on this proud fellow again, who scorns us all?" Then the rough Tor began to heave and move, and bluster into stormy sobs, and say, "I never loved him. An I meet with him, I care not howsoever great he be, then will I strike at him and strike him down. Give me good fortune, I will strike him dead, for this discomfort he hath done the house." To whom the gentle sister made reply, "Fret not yourself, dear brother, nor be wroth, seeing it is no more Sir Lancelot's fault not to love me, than it is mine to love him of all men who seems to me the highest." "Highest?" the father answered, echoing, "Highest?" He meant to break the passion in her. "Nay, daughter, I know not what you call the highest, but this I know, for all the people know it. He loves the queen, and in open shame, and she returns his love in open shame. If this be high, what is it to be low?" Then spake the lily maid of Astolat, "Sweet father, all too faint and sick am I for anger. These are slanders. Never yet was noble man but made ignoble talk. He makes no friend who never made a foe. But now it is my glory to have loved one peerless without stain. So let me pass, my father, howsoe'er I seem to you, not all unhappy, having loved God's best and greatest, though my love had no return. Yet seeing you desire your child to live, thanks. But you work against your own desire, for if I could believe the things you say, I should but die the sooner. Wherefore cease, sweet father, and bid call the ghostly man hither, and let me shrive me clean, and die." So when the ghostly man had come and gone, she, with a face bright as for sin forgiven, besought Lavaine to write as she devised a letter, word for word. And when he asked, "Is it for Lancelot? Is it for my dear lord? Then will I bear it gladly," she replied, "for Lancelot and the queen and all the world, but I myself must bear it." Then he wrote the letter she devised, which being writ and folded, "O sweet father, tender and true, deny me not," she said. "Ye never yet denied my fancies, this however strange my latest. Lay the letter in my hand a little ere I die, and close the hand upon it. I shall guard it even in death, And when the heat is gone from out my heart, then take the little bed on which I died for Lancelot's love, and deck it like the queen's for richness, and me also like the queen in all I have of rich, and lay me on it. And let there be prepared a chariot bier to take me to the river, and a barge be ready on the river, clothed in black. I go in state to court to meet the queen. There surely I shall speak for mine own self, and none of you can speak for me so well, and therefore let our dumb old man alone go with me. He can steer and row, and he will guide me to that palace, to the doors." She ceased. Her father promised, whereupon she grew so cheerful that they deemed her death was rather in the fantasy than the blood. But 10 slow mornings passed, and on the 11th her father laid the letter in her hand, and closed the hand upon it, and she died. So that day there was dole in Astolat.